on. So I think we've got everybody who's going to attend this evening. We've got a message from Nancy and from Steve that they won't be able to attend this evening's meeting. So welcome, and I just call the meeting to order with a disclosure of pecuniary interest under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act. If anyone has anything to disclose, please indicate. And if not, we can move on to confirmation of the meeting agenda. And I don't believe there are any changes from our side. So if everyone else is in agreement, we can move to confirm the agenda by consensus. And then approve. Okay, so that's moving on to item 3 then. Item 4, approval of the minutes from the last meeting. And were there any corrections? Anything that you received, Devlin? No? Okay. And then if there's nothing, then we can approve the minutes from the last meeting also by consensus. And that brings us to the actual action items. However, before we do that, I just thought I'd take a minute and introduce to you Christine. Hi, Christine. There you go.
Hello, everybody.
Hi. So Christine, go ahead.
I'm very happy to be here with you, and I hope that you will enjoy the odd comment from me along the way. Just to give you a bit of background, not my life story. My hubby and I moved here just over 4 years ago, and we were brought to the area by many of the things that have brought all of us here. Love the geology, love the history, the buildings, the culture. My husband plays pipes with the Fergus Pipe Band, and I help out at the Fergus Games as environmental director, which is a very fancy way of saying I do all the recycling, which I'm quite passionate about. And my motivation for coming and joining you all is I like the cycle of respecting the past and how it informs the present and how it could inform the future. And I know we're a small community, but in terms of the Ontario perspective, I think we have a lot here that is important. And that's what's brought me here.
Well, thank you very much, Christine. I was going to invite some of the other members of the committee to also just perhaps welcome you and give a little of their background, just so you'd get to know us a little bit better. Because we're meeting over Zoom, we don't have the chance to really chat before and after the meeting the way we normally would. So I can start out and just say I've been living in the area for a long time now, but I'm still not considered a local person, I guess, because I've only been here 25 years. Yeah, and the same things kind of attracted me to this area when we moved, was that the heritage buildings and that they were being used and not just kept as sort of museum pieces. And there's a lot of work being done to keep the buildings relevant and useful even in the 21st century, which I think is important. And sounds like you're part of that thinking as well. So yeah. I've been on the committee for almost 6 years now. So at some point they made me chair, I guess, because I didn't step backwards at the right time. But anyway, everyone is involved in different aspects of working on the committee through the subcommittees. So I'll maybe ask them to give you a little background on their subcommittee work as well. I don't know, Don, you're at the far right side of my screen, so maybe you lead off.
Yeah, welcome, Christine. And just to give you a bit of background too, I guess I'm a newcomer here because I've been here for 15 years, so that's kind of the way it is, right? But yeah, I'm a history teacher just outside of this region, but live in Fergus, and I live in a house from 1860, one of these stone cottages on Garafraxa Street. So I've always had a very strong interest in heritage in terms of from a geographical perspective. That's sort of where my degree is in environmental science, and And those are the types of things I teach too. I teach history and environmental science. So I'm kind of coming from the same love for the geology and the landscape, and also this great community we have in terms of all of the heritage buildings and so on. So that's just a brief one. But do you want me to talk about one of our subcommittees you're saying though?
Well, you could just say what you're part of now. And
yeah, the one that seems to be the main focus right now for my efforts has been the cultural heritage landscape. We're kind of in the last phases of that right now, and it's been an exciting program that's been going on now for, I guess, about a year and a half, so it might have been. No, I don't think we have any items of it tonight that will come up, but I've always found that that was one of the things that I studied was landscape interpretation, is what it actually is. So I really have a strong passion for that one area, and I'm really excited about this report and its final phases. So that's just that. That's just one of the many committees. I'll let other people certainly speak to theirs too.
Sure. Well, I see Erin there. She's looking like she's ready to go. So Erin, you can maybe go next.
Hi, Christine, and welcome to the committee. My name is Erin Eldridge. I've been in Fergus for about 12 years, so a relative newcomer, I guess, comparatively. I've been on the Heritage Committee for, this is my second term, so maybe coming up to 6 or 7 years now. And I'm a landscape architect by training and profession, and also do some work with cultural heritage landscapes through my kind of day job as well. So yeah, I'm on the designated properties subcommittee. Yeah.
Great. Thanks very much, Erin. Sherry, maybe you could, sure.
Yeah. Hi, Christine. I'm Sherry Bunnell. I've been in this, I guess, area. I was just trying to figure it out. So I've been about 17 years. I was living in Fergus, and then I've been in Elora for the last 13. So I guess grand total of 30 years. I just love this small community. I love heritage buildings. I have never lived in one per se, but certainly love the architect of any of the old buildings that we find in Elora and in Fergus. And I'm currently on the subcommittee of designation. And yeah, so I've done that for, I guess I've been on that committee for the last 6 years when I started Central Wellington Heritage.
Thanks very much, Sherry. And Nanette?
Hi, Christine. Welcome to the committee. I have lived in Elora for probably about 32 years now, not originally from Elora or Canada, from Liverpool, England, and just very passionate about heritage buildings. Just watched, my background is watching Liverpool raise from the ashes, because when I left Liverpool, it was pretty run down, and now they've restored all of the buildings. So I like to see that here in Canada too, like in Central Wellington. So very passionate about restoring buildings and heritage buildings too. I'm on the Municipal Register Subcommittee, and the work that we do, we're just taking pictures of properties that we think should be on the should be designated or listed, just making registers of those so that we can protect those buildings if they come up for demolition, or if there's any renovations that take place. We just want to make sure that we catch them before anything happens, anything drastic happens to them.
Great, excellent. Thank you, Nanette. And Nico is the vice chair also of the committee, so I'll ask him, maybe he's the last one of us who's here today. There's a couple who are missing from the meeting.
Yes. Welcome, Christine. My name is Nico. I'm living in Fergus and been here for about 36 years, I guess. Raised a family with 2 girls in Fergus. I come out of a background of child welfare and domestic violence, and that kept me pretty busy. So it really wasn't until I retired that I was able to sort of pursue a passion for local heritage. And so I've been on the committee for, oh gosh, 3-4 years. And I'm on a subcommittee of the designation committee. I'm also on an advisory committee to council, which is the Healthy Growth Committee. Yeah, I guess that's about it. So welcome.
Sorry, we're thankful for your work on the cultural heritage landscape study as well, Nico.
Right.
Yes. Okay, great. So thank you, everyone. I think you've probably had a chance to talk to Mariana, and there's also no. Okay, Mariana, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. Maybe I'll just introduce that the rest of us are staff. Devlin, Lisa, and I are staff. Devlin and Lisa are in the clerk's department, and they definitely help with running the committee and the Zoom meetings and all the technology now. But Devlin is the point of contact for the committee, and then I work with the planning department. So I'm the staff liaison to the committee on the planning side and try to assist in whatever way I can, most particularly with legislation and reporting to council, and just recommendations that need to go forward to move applications and other matters and other projects forward, such as the Cultural Heritage Landscape Study. So if you have any questions about any of that, about processes or legislation, or want further information, I can definitely, and I will be sending you some links to heritage resources that you could have for your review and for your reference. So welcome.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much, everyone. Yeah, Christine, there'll probably be quite a few terms even this evening that, as things go along, that feel free to if there's some point you wanted to raise, feel free to ask a question. We don't have a huge agenda this evening, so it's a good time to review things if that's possible for you. And otherwise, yeah, there'll be lots of opportunities between meetings to also review literature and ask questions. We email back and forth and so on. So yeah, great. And hopefully someday soon, we'll be back into some form of in-person meetings. So we have that to look forward to as well. Anyway, I'll ask everyone to turn to their agendas then, to the action items and the new business. 5.1. And we have our delegate here, Carl DiToro, who is going to give us some background information on this item 5.1, which is a request to demolish a detached garage at 160 Garafraxa Street West. And I believe this is a listed property, is it? So everyone's familiar with the term listing of the property. It's not designated, but we still have to give our approval of the demolition request. So that would be a question that we'll have after we've had a chance to ask some questions and hear from Carl. So with that, Carl, if you wanted to go ahead and present your request to the committee.
Yeah, good evening, everybody. So this is my first time doing something like this. I wonder if it's best, should I read the submission that I sent earlier, or should I just sort of summarize in my own words? What usually works best?
I think everyone has seen the submission, the written submission, and they've had a chance to review it. So okay. I think the best is for you to just give us a little background in your own words, and then we'll open the floor up to questions, if there are any concerns in terms of this. So yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so we moved into this location, so we're at 160 Garafraxa Street West here in Fergus. We moved in July of last year, myself and my partner, who's just off screen. And we noticed that right away from looking at the place that there was a detached garage, which is evident in the photos. And we were excited to have it. You know, we really wanted to use it to store our yard stuff, etc. But after we moved in and getting to know the building a little bit better, it was pretty clear that the structural integrity of the garage wasn't at 100%. You know, it's visibly leaning as depicted in some of the photos. It is generally run down. Truly, initially, it looked as though we may be able to repair it, but that's, I think, beyond the scope of this building at this juncture. The other big red flag, having moved in and moved all of our things in, we did notice the presence of termites here on the property and specifically within that outbuilding. And we've gone through major steps to correct. We've had a full treatment done on the main house. We had the inspector, whose name is escaping me now, but he was the gentleman who worked extensively with the city of Guelph and has just begun exploring here in Fergus in late last year. He and his team came and did an inspection on site. We've removed a few tree stumps. So, you know, that's sort of our second bullet point. Really, to remove that outbuilding would do a lot, we think, to completely remove the issue of termites here. And then the third bullet point would be to improve our outdoor living space. So while we don't plan on putting another building in its place, we would put a patio, something like some sort of awning, but nothing that would require another building permit. So that's really the summary. You know, number one, it is a safety concern. Number two, we're trying to further mitigate termites. And then number three, to improve the condition of our backyard and give ourselves some increased living space.
Thank you. A good summary, Carl. I'll just open it up then to questions from the committee, if there are any.
And I will also add that our main building certainly is, you know, essentially old. However, this building looks to be maybe only 20 or 30 years old. It was added obviously well after the original listed building. So not sure if that makes a difference, but I thought I'd add that as well.
Yeah, okay. Sure, so I'll go ahead. Is there anyone of the committee members who has any concerns or questions for Carl on this request to demolish? If not, we can then, is it Mariana? We could just, and Devlin, we could perhaps then have the motion that you'd prepared. And I'm assuming no one's, okay. I just have one, actually, I do have one question for you, Carl. Did you say you were going to remove the pad? Or are you going to use that as your patio base?
I think we'll use that as the patio base. That looks to be in good shape. It's really just the wooden structure on top.
Yeah, okay. The other thing I was looking at on those photos, and it just might be a suggestion for you. No, I understand I did the similar thing a few years ago, demolishing a garage in similar condition. The windows on the one side there look to be like they were possibly added to the garage, and they were an older style window. So they may be original to some other building. And that might be something you'd consider finding a home for. Perhaps there are some artisans around who actually appreciate the old frames and the old glass. So that's something, rather than just sending it to the landfill, you could look at seeing if there's somebody who's interested in taking those, because unfortunately right now the recycle centers at the landfill, the transfer stations aren't open because of COVID. And that would have been a great place to leave them, because lots of people swing by there and pick stuff like that up. So that's just a thought.
Yeah, that's a great suggestion.
Yeah. And I'm assuming, then go ahead, Devlin, and perhaps you could read the motion.
Okay, so that Heritage Center Wellington does not oppose the demolition of the detached garage at listed property known as 160 Garafraxa Street West, Fergus.
Okay, so you've heard the motion. Are there any questions to the motion? Additional questions? Okay, and I don't see anyone has any questions. So all in favor of the motion, please indicate. Okay, and opposed? I don't see anybody. It looked like everybody was in favor, so the motion is carried.
We do need a mover and seconder for
Oh,
that.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
We're
been a
doing so
while.
good here. Yeah. Okay, Don's gonna move that one. And who can I pick? There's Nico is our seconder. Sorry.
Thank you.
Are we still good with the with
Everybody
with the result?
voted for. I think
Yeah.
we're okay.
Okay. Good. Carl, it sounds like then you've got your permit to demolish. And I think you'll be able to have any further discussions then with Mariana if there's anything else required.
Okay, so I'll follow up. Marianne, I think you and I have been emailing, so I can just resume it that way.
I should say you've got your permission to demolish and then you still have to get the permit, I think, issued. Is that correct? Yeah.
Yes. Have you contacted the building department about whether you require a building permit for demolition?
I believe I do. I did contact, the name is escaping now, but I believe I will need a permit as a
Right. So the process is that this has to go to council. So the report will be going to council on the 22nd.
Okay.
And to committee of the whole, and then 1 week later, it will be ratified by council. So after that, you can apply for your permit if one is required.
So, sorry, I'm just going to take a quick note. So that would be like first week of April kind of thing. We can apply.
Yeah, the council meeting is March 29th. So you can apply anytime after that if council approves it.
Okay.
And I'll confirm with you what the decision is.
Okay, perfect.
Okay.
That's great. Well, thank you so much. Take care, everyone.
Bye-bye.
That's right. Okay, so we're to our next delegation, which is a request for funding supporting the Elora, the Model Village 1820 to 1920 project. And we have as our delegation Ian Easterbrook, Kathy, and I'm not going to attempt Bouma. Okay, you can do that. And Susan Thorning. Welcome to the meeting. I think perhaps if everyone's had a chance to read, I believe there was something, no, so you're going to present it. There is nothing, there was no information attached. So perhaps you could, I'm not sure who's going to speak first. But one of you can go ahead and present this to the committee, and then we'll have some questions after. Ian, do you want to go ahead?
I'm doing the presentation.
Oh, okay, thank you, Kathy.
Okay.
Sorry, how do you pronounce your last name?
Bouma.
Bouma, okay.
Bouma. And is Ian on here too?
Ian is,
Okay, all right. I'm just one sec here. I'm okay. Thank you for allowing us to present to your committee tonight. May I introduce, as you say, Ian Easterbrook. He is a member of the Wellington County Historical Society for over 30 years. Susan Thorning, sister of the late Stephen Thorning and the holder of the manuscript that we are speaking about tonight. And I am Kathy Bouma, treasurer of the society and passionate about our community. Everyone can hear me okay? Yeah, okay. The mandate of the Wellington County Historical Society is to preserve, illuminate, and publicize the history of Wellington County. We are a registered charitable organization and in our 10th decade. It was started in 1928. We have published the annual Wellington County History each June since 1987. The founding editor was Stephen Thorning. And this is the latest volume, number 33, that came out last year. And you may be interested to know that there is a very detailed article on the commercial hotel, which is an item that's on your agenda later tonight. And it's a fascinating read. And I will ensure that your committee receives a copy so you can all have a look at it if you've not read it before. This manuscript, Elora, the Model Village, 1820 to 1920, about the early history of Elora, was written by the late local historian, former Elora councillor and deputy reeve Stephen Thorning. In times of growth and rapid change like that which Elora is now experiencing, we look to the past for a sense of continuity, place, and belonging. Elora's past remains both tangible and relevant as residents walk its historic streetscapes, live and work within heritage buildings, and recognize the significance of street names and neighborhoods. For both newcomers and longtime residents, an understanding of its history and how one fits into that narrative is important to fostering a sense of belonging and the feeling of being at home. This book will provide that background. Residents and visitors regularly seek information about Elora's history from its tourist office, the Wellington County Historical Society, and the local archives at the museum. Unlike earlier histories of the village, which are mostly anecdotal, Thorning's manuscript is meticulously footnoted, demonstrating a level of research unparalleled in previous publications. A thorough and unique study of Elora's early development and growth, it will prove invaluable to residents, students, and visitors seeking to understand the history of this part of Southern Ontario. This manuscript, which Stephen titled Elora, the Model Village, will add to existing literature while becoming an essential reference for all to Elora's past. Dedicated volunteers have already scanned and transcribed to digital format Thorning's hand-typed pages, but other steps require funding, such as the costs of editing, graphic design, indexing, and the fees that public institutions such as the Archives of Ontario charge for reproductions of photographs from their collections. We expect the costs of the promotion, printing, and distribution will be recouped by book sales. We have found an editor, someone knowledgeable with Stephen's writings and research, and skilled and informed with local history. This is an extremely positive step in moving this project forward. Elora's historic downtown core is being overhauled and reinvented through the initiative and investment of Pearl Hospitality, while the former village struggles to maintain its identity within the broader context of post-amalgamation Centre Wellington. The publication of this manuscript is therefore a priority, as it would help provide readers with a sense of continuity and a profound sense of place. Situate Elora within its historical context and foster a sense of belonging in both citizens new to the area and long-time residents. This book will be of interest to the approximately 5,000 current residents of Elora, untold numbers of former and future residents, and others with an interest in the historical development of communities. And of course, Stephen Thorning's local history columns over the years, and still published, still continued in updated fashion by Susan Thorning in the Wellington Advertiser, suggest a ready-made audience for the book. A friend of the Society wrote, Heritage Centre Wellington consultants and township staff rely on Stephen's 35 years of research and writing on Centre Wellington and Wellington County. He is the most reliable source of information for Heritage Centre Wellington subcommittees, writing Ontario Heritage Act designation documents, and more recently, the Cultural Heritage Landscape Study to protect 18 areas of Centre Wellington valued by the community, was informed by his columns in Valuing Our History. When consultants are required to write environmental assessment or heritage impact assessments, their reports reflect Stephen's research. What publishing the new book does is as significant to understanding Elora's history as John Connon's early history of Elora in 1931-32. Stephen provides the first comprehensive and detailed history of the evolution of Elora. To date, the Wellington County Historical Society has committed $5,000 towards this project, and a private donor has committed $5,000. This book is Steve's gift to the citizens of the village. We hope that you will support it. Thank you, and we're open to questions.
Thank you very much, Kathy. That was very informative and to the point. I'll open up then to the committee for questions. Don.
Yeah, I just want to start off to thank you for coming, though, three of you today. And I know that I've read so much of Stephen's work over the years through everything from the archival articles that are there and the ones that show up in our local newspaper. And Susan, I really appreciate that you're keeping that legacy going. And just like you mentioned today with John and Thomas Conan, the photographers, you know, they were on our agenda a few weeks back. And I think that certainly Stephen is one of them too, that is, we don't want his writings or even his legacy to be forgotten. And I certainly think that this is great that we're at this stage to consider this. I'm really interested in these manuscripts. I'm sure that, like you say, you've spent some good time looking through it and checking and so on. And I know how much his research has meant to our community. So I'm really, more than anything, I'm in support of what you're doing. But I'd really like to hear what you're expected from us. Like, is it funding that you're looking for, and or is it just support that you're looking for? I'm just throwing that question out there to you. Ian, it looks like Ian wants to.
Go ahead, Ian. Just hit your unmute button.
Thank you. Found it.
You got it.
The first thing is we acknowledge this is not the time to be looking for money for heritage, frankly. Too many other issues in front of us. But the Society has had some experience previously in fundraising. If you remember, some of you, the Pilkington book, for which we raised funds. And so what we'll start off with is the patrons who already helped support the publication of the journal, and we're looking for other people who would like to recognize Steve's good work, or indeed the village of Elora, with a check and a tax receipt. So we've got our work cut out for us.
But we'll take money from you too.
I believe you mentioned the total amount of the funding you're looking for is about $20,000, was it?
Yeah.
Roughly, yeah.
So you're about halfway there now?
I'd like to think so, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Based on what you've told us?
Yes.
I'm just wondering if it would be helpful if there are no other questions. Mariana, can you give us a bit of background on what might be available then?
Sure, thank you. So I do have our operating budget available here. It's not current to some of the work that's happened this past month. So we've had some research done, and we've also placed quite a large ad for Heritage Week in the newspaper. But we do have some funding available. So if the committee feels it's appropriate, did you want me to go through some numbers or?
Well, I'm just wondering if we should then perhaps, if there are no other questions, we could go back then and have just a discussion amongst ourselves as to the merits of this and perhaps whether or not we then want to look at an amount. I think that's the next step for us.
Do you want a timeline that we're looking at?
Okay.
Susan, I think Susan, I'm going to let you speak on this one.
Yeah, and then I'm going to recognize Christine in a minute here. So go ahead, Susan.
Well, I think that everything is set to go. The background work of doing the transcription, which was done by 3 volunteers, spending their time at their computers, reading the typed manuscript that was on erasable bond. I don't know if any of you remember that. So it sort of dates the time of the manuscript. There is work to be done. Certainly the editing, there is some editing to do on it. The format of the footnotes, I think, needs to be updated. There's also the need for an index. So there's quite a bit of work to be done there, which will probably take several months to do. But I think that from my point of view, my understanding of the Society's position is that we're ready to move forward immediately. And probably within months, the book will be ready for printing and publication.
Okay. And okay, so Christine, did you have a question then?
Yes, just to help me understand what the request is, but a few questions ahead of that one for clarity. What kind of binding are you expecting to produce for this book? Is it hardcover? Is it soft cover with the scroll down the side?
Not a scroll for sure, but probably soft cover, I believe, but we haven't confirmed on that one yet.
And about how many copies do you think you will produce?
Ian,
Gosh, I wish I could help.
Yeah.
I think on the Pilkington book, I think we probably published about 500 copies. Maybe slightly more, could have been 750. Sorry, it's a long time ago. I think our intention this time around would be, as with the Pilkington book, the largest number of sales were pre-orders. So we invited people to buy at a slightly reduced price, sign up, and when the time came, we delivered the books, having already received their checks. Thank you very much. I think we'll probably do the same with the Elora book.
And printing is different these days than it was a few years ago. You can print, you can do 100 copies, and if we find that we really do need to do more, we can order another 100. Like it's
Yes,
not
of
the
course.
printing press days.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I do appreciate the work that's gone on behind the scenes to bring this to the light that we have right now. I think it's amazing. I would just ask, when you think you're recouping your costs through sales, would our committee think of our funding, if we were to give you some, as a loan, or does it really need to be absorbed into the book project?
If I may answer, I think in order to keep the cost to the general public down, we've got to ask for the costs of editing, the costs of the getting the illustrations, which come from Ontario Archives or from the Museum and Archives, but it costs money, and the cost of indexing. If we'd like to prepay those so that the book comes out at a reasonable cost when we advertise it and do the promotion.
Of course. Thank you very much. Thanks, Philip.
Thank you, Christine. Great question. I see Sherry. I recognize Sherry.
Can you tell us, Kathy, how much it's going to retail for, like one individual book?
Oh, we don't really know that yet, but we expect it'll be up in the $50 range, I think, is what we're thinking. Susan, you? Yeah.
I'm not sure. I know I've been part of discussions about it, and it depends on what the format will be. But because the model that we're using assumes that the cost of the book, the cost of actually printing the book, will be covered by the sales. It's sort of a separate item, and that any money that was able to be put forward for this project wouldn't be required for that part of the project. It would be to cover the cost of editing and the other production, the pre-printing production. That's my understanding.
Mm-hmm.
We're guessing at this stage, there are 24 chapters altogether. It's going to be hefty. We're guessing that it'll probably, by the time you add in the index at the back, it'll be around 500 pages. So this is not going to fit in your pocket.
Don? You had a follow-up?
Yeah. I've published a few of my wife's books, and I'm telling you, the editing is definitely where most of the labor is, and I can understand your cost and that, especially with indexing and so on. And from what I know of printing too, it is sales which will cover it. And I understand all of that budgeting that you're talking about, and I certainly know that the editing is the intense labor, and I'm so glad that you have some volunteers. But it's not just that; it's the actual production of it, getting into electronic copy and get a digital copy, and then getting it to the print. The actual print phase is a huge amount of work, and I can understand the budgeting for that. That it seems very reasonable what you're estimating. The other question I had then, what I'm kind of getting a hint at, it sounds like it's going to be heavily illustrated too. Is that what you're hoping?
Yeah. Steve, when he wrote it, indicated which photographs to use. Not altogether, but certainly in many cases. So what we now have to do is locate the photograph to which he referred, because sometimes, of course, it was something that he'd seen out at the museum and archives, but it might have been something that he was lent by somebody down the street, or it might have been something that he'd found at the archives in Ottawa or in Toronto. Yeah. So, and this is why you can burn up quite a lot of time finding exactly what he had in mind, or something that's close.
Yeah, that's a lot of research, and yeah, you're right. A lot of them end up in the Ontario archives, even in our archives, and in the Guelph University archives, and they can be all over the place, right? So yeah, certainly tracking them down is going to be.
But the editor that we have found, she is very knowledgeable in all those places, so that's a huge bonus. Yes.
Okay, I just knew from my angle. I don't know. I know we were talking so much about the printing of the book. I really, I'm understanding more from the editing part, because that's kind of what I've worked on. And I know the amount of hours that goes into it, and certainly in this case, the amount of research to find even these photographs and getting them scanned and set for printing is going to take a lot of labor. So I really appreciate all the work that you're doing on that, and I understand your budgeting for it too.
Yeah. And I think Elora is going to be 190 next year, so that's another bonus too. To look forward as well. 190.
Great. Oh, Nico?
Is this solely Stephen's work, or are there other contributors to the book as well?
All Stephen's work, yeah.
Okay. Well, go ahead, Susan.
The manuscript was in his study, and in 2 binders. It's work that he did probably in the 80s. and is exceedingly detailed. It is definitely his work. And I don't believe that that to my knowledge, there is not another local history that has as an academic approach as this. Some of the chapters have up to 100 footnotes. Everything is really, really clearly defined, and the stories are put together. He has taken information from archives in London, in Ottawa, in Toronto, and here, and woven them all together to really give a story of the individuals and the businesses and the mood. And at the same time, he has taken that local view and put it into a provincial and national context of what was happening historically at the time. It's a really quite amazing piece of work.
Well, it certainly sounds like it's not only a tribute to heritage, but also a tribute to the legacy that Stephen has left behind. So I really commend you on this work. Thank you.
I'm just curious, is there any consideration, and I suppose one of the benefits of that consideration might be accessibility, but I'm wondering, have you thought about some form of ebook, which could be accessed by, perhaps folks who didn't want to pay the $50, but might be able to get access to the information and the photographs through an ebook for perhaps a lesser amount? So yeah, go ahead.
I would say that the little committee who's bringing this book forward wrestled with that problem, and I don't think there's any question in our minds that that might be down the road, but at the moment we're focused on the book that you can hold in your hand and leaf through the pages, because that's the vision each of us has. It's hard to predict the future, and we may well feel differently down the road, but I guess we all felt really strongly that we've got to have something you can carry.
Yeah. Oh, I can certainly appreciate that. Yeah, I see Christine has one more follow-up. Go ahead.
I'm just wondering if Mariana could guide us. Would there be any grant monies available to a project like this that we could help them access?
There's none that I'm aware of right now. I know the Elora Arts Council, they're probably more well-versed in what funding is available. And I know when Beverly Cairns came and spoke to us, one of our previous meetings, she talked about some funding that might be available. So none that I'm aware of, but I'm sure Susan and Kathy, you're familiar with Beverly,
Yeah.
and Ian, and I don't know if you've had the opportunity to speak with them as well, that there might be some funding available there.
I was just going to offer, the year before last, I guess, we applied to the McDonald Foundation for those monies, and there were other priorities, and for sure there are much more community and social priorities at the moment that at another time and place that would have been the ideal spot to fund this project, because it was certainly in keeping with Jack McDonald's honor towards the town. But as I say, at the moment, I think we accept that there are other priorities for that funding.
I can do a little bit of research just through my Heritage Network, just to see if there is anything available, and if there is, I will pass it along. I know with the pandemic, there's a little bit of funding that's coming out now from the government regarding heritage initiatives. So there might be something there, but I will have a look and I'll let you know if there is anything.
So okay, thank you, Mariana. So perhaps to wrap things up then, is there a consensus then that we would be interested in making a donation towards the publishing of this book from the committee, and that we would perhaps then investigate what kind of funding we have available and an amount that we could get back. I'm trying to get an idea from the committee then in terms of, are we interested in proceeding with looking at some funding, or are we not? Okay, Don first.
I don't mean to keep, if anyone else wants to go first, but I think that's a good path. I think we can suggest our interest and, our light commitment until we obviously look at our funds, right? So I think it's something that we could probably do between now and our next meeting, maybe come up with a good look at it. So, because obviously right now we don't know what funds are available and so on. So I think that would make sense to say sort of what you're going with, Phil, that idea of showing our commitment, and then kind of we'll get back to you when we get to look at our books. That makes sense.
Is that something there's consensus on, just the way Don has summed that up? Yeah. Okay, I see some heads nodding. So I think that's a good way to, perhaps we can finish off this evening. That's a positive note, that there is definitely interest from the committee then to support this endeavor, and without making too much of a commitment at this time. We'll look and see what funding is available and give you an answer then for the next meeting, if that's acceptable.
All right, and who shall I make sure gets this copy of our latest one?
Should we have you send that to Mariana, and then we can perhaps, being that it's a physical copy, if people want to see it, we'll have to have some sort of decontamination process, I suppose. I don't know. Sit for a day somewhere.
Already have a copy? I thought all you guys already have a copy. But
well, I know Don has a copy already, but
Don has a copy.
Everyone should have a copy because Don's
I'm
a member.
biased here, so yes, but I do have a copy.
So Marianne, I'll make sure you get it. I'll drop it off at the township
Sure.
office.
It can go through Devlin actually as the committee's clerk.
Okay.
Yeah, it's probably the best, just so everything is funneled through one place.
Good. Christine, I see you were just, go ahead.
I just wanted to make sure that our guests would understand that my questions would in no way be considered a negative thing towards their project. I think the project is stunning, and personally, it's such a fabulous wealth of information that we would never want to lose it. And I just like to thank them for their time tonight.
Yes, and I can echo that as well. Thank you very much, Christina. Christine, that was an excellent summary. Thank you for coming this evening, Kathy.
Can I ask one question?
I'm sorry, who is that? I didn't.
Sherry.
Sherry, yeah, go ahead, Sherry.
Yeah, sorry. Is the library going to be owning some of those as well, so that people can check them out?
Oh, for sure. Yes, for sure. The Wellington County Libraries will get some copies for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that might be something we could consider, perhaps supporting, even purchasing some that would go to different organizations.
Yeah.
So that schools and so on might also have access to that in their libraries.
And at the same time, if you placed a largish order, you would then have some in the back room that you could hand out to visiting dignitaries.
Yes, that's not a bad idea, actually. There, we might have add something to our Heritage Awards.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you again.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for coming in.
Thank you very much.
Yep, and we will then be in touch with you in the future, not too distant future then, regarding this project and our support.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks so much.
Just as a follow-up to that, then Mariana, how would you suggest that we assess and prioritize this over the course of the next month?
Yeah, so
out looking at our annual budget and knowing what might be available.
I'll be looking at getting a current statement. I know that, and maybe you can remind me, when Beverly came to our meeting, she was asking for support for the Conan project as well.
Yes.
So does anyone recall what that request or that amount was? For some reason, 3,000 is ringing a bell for me, but I don't know if that was like a total amount that they were looking for. It was for a plaque.
That was to put towards a plaque,
Right.
which I don't know where that stands right now.
So what I suggest is that we touch base with Beverly regarding that request, just to see where that's at, so that that doesn't get lost. And then we'll get a current statement after the work that we've recently done, just to see what our budget is. And what we need to do is look at our work plan for the year, because we do have some designations we're going to want to go through, and a couple of other media issues, like media projects, regarding maybe another ad in the newspaper. So what we just need to do is budget a little bit, like work through our work plan for the year, assign some budget money to that, and then just see how much we might have to work with at the end of that, and see how much money would be available to provide. And then the committee can make a decision as to whether it wants to pursue donating some money towards this project.
Okay. So what we could do then is have this brought back as an action item then for the next meeting. And perhaps we should also include the request for the Conan project as well, so that we would have those two requests, and we can send out some information beforehand then as far as the work plan and what we'll need to fund the work plan, and then what's available for the total budget. Okay. Moving on then to the subcommittee updates. And this is, to a certain extent, has some bearing on public relations and education subcommittee. Certainly, Nancy unfortunately can't be here this evening. So as Mariana just mentioned, I'm going to work with Mariana to revise the work plan. And we'll send it out to you before the next meeting, so that, you know, as far as the education and public relations subcommittee, that'll be included in the work plan, and some of those things that we had planned earlier, including like the Bert Duclos educational workshops, and I believe a masonry workshop. Those are things we can't do in person, but there are other things which might, you know, which some of the funding for that could be directed towards these other projects, which are basically public relations and education related. Okay, for 6.2, that's the designated properties subcommittee. Perhaps I could call on Nico to give us an update there.
Okay. I think some of what we might be discussing will be inherent or reflected in 7.3 and 7.4 of the agenda. So I'll wait until we discuss those items rather than repeating them here, because those have been part of our discussions. We had a designation subcommittee meeting last week. There are several properties that we want to have a look at, and I think it was pretty universally agreed that we really needed to get going and look at getting going on doing some designations. It's been quite a while since we've done any. There was some discussion about bylaws, and Mariana, could you update us in terms of the students and some of the work that's been done in that regard?
Sure. You're referring to the updated designation bylaws?
Yes, the updated
yes.
designation
So we've had quite a pile of updated designation bylaws that have been drafted by students several years ago, and Again, given that there's a process involved with each one, the bylaw has to be rewritten, redrafted, and then there's a notice process that happens that's required by the Ontario Heritage Act. The owner has the right to appeal, and then the bylaw has to go through the notice process and get re-registered. So there is a process and a cost associated with each one. And what we discussed at the subcommittee meeting was that we would look at the list, which I sent out to the committee, the subcommittee, and try to prioritize some of those that we feel might warrant being updated as you know, in the near future. And so we will try to get a list together of that, like the top few that we could manage to do this year. And so we'll be working on that behind the scenes. We have scheduled monthly subcommittee meetings now with the designation subcommittee so that work keeps going. And if we decide to bring some of those forward based on priority, or if something is, let's say, upcoming, some type of a redevelopment application or something that might impact the property, then we might prioritize those so that we bring them forward to this committee. And then again, as I said, they would go to council. But the committee would look at them first and then bring it to this full committee for some type of a resolution or recommendation to update that bylaw to council.
And there have been some requests for designation actually emanating from the community. So that's been really helpful. There's 14 Princess Street. I think Erin was going to look at contacting them. There's also the Allen Farmstead. That has been on our radar for quite some time. It's the farmstead to the west of the museum. And so we have had initial contact with that family. Their request was that they talk to family members about the efficacy of doing a designation, and it's timely that we get back to them. So so I'll be pursuing that. And other than that, unless my colleagues on the committee, Sherry and Erin, can think of anything that I've left out.
Can I just add something there?
Sure, go ahead, Mary.
Typically, our process in the past has been that if we are discussing an individual property for designation, we would invite the owner to the meeting. So that right now we're discussing, let's say, lists of properties and which ones we might be prioritizing in the near future. But if we will be discussing them sort of officially at a meeting and asking for the committee to make a recommendation to bring forward a designation, we would notify the owner anyway that their property will be discussed at the meeting. And if they would like to attend, then we would invite them to attend so they can be part of the discussion and be available to answer any questions or note any concerns that they might have with it. So I just wanted to put that out there, that the committee's aware that we would notify the owner if we're discussing their property publicly in this forum.
Okay, thank you very much, Mariana. Thank you, Nico. And we can move on to the Municipal Register Subcommittee. I could maybe just add here that the Register is different from the Designation Subcommittee in that the Register, for Christine's benefit, is just is a way of informing and listing a property which we think in the future either could be worthy of designation or which we feel we would like to have some sort of notice in terms of whether that property there was any plans to demolish that property. So that being listed means we consider the property worthy enough that of consideration for designation in order to save it should it be at some point decided that the owner wants to demolish it. That would give us a little bit more, a 60-day window in which to research and process the property in question. So from our point of view on the Municipal Register Subcommittee, I think we've done just about all of the properties in Center Wellington have now been photographed, and we still have to review them, but they have been photographed. Mariana, do you have an update, or was that from the last meeting?
Yeah, so that's been done, and we just have to schedule now a subcommittee meeting, hopefully over Zoom, where I'll be able to screen share, and then we can systematically go through those the way we were previously, just to keep that work moving.
Yeah. Okay. So that's in the plans as well, and I noticed that it was an email regarding some photographs we needed to complete. The properties that have been listed in the town of Fergus and Elora, I think. So that's something I can get out and do in the next few days for
Yeah,
Greg.
there's just a handful, half a dozen that we just
Yep.
need to be retaken so that we can put the appropriate photo on our website with the listed property.
Okay.
There were just a couple of errors noted.
Okay, so that completes the subcommittee updates. Outside of we're going to talk about the CHL study, and also now hear from Nico again on his update on the Healthy Growth Advisory Committee.
Yes, thank you. I've now been in attendance to 2 of those committees. There's been primarily discussion about attainable housing. There has also been discussion about the general process of discussions. Brett Salmon had come out with a report as to just to facilitate some discussion around issues around one of which is the attainable housing issue. But there's been a lot of discussion about how Mr. Salmon's report interfaces with other reports, provincial reports, such as the Planning Act, the Provincial Policy Statement, the More Homes, More Choice Growth Plan, and the growth plan for the Greater Golden Horseshoe. So there are at least 3 issues that come into play that we need to be looking at. But specifically, I think there's been concern about the fact that what we need to do is we need to be guided by the Planning Act and the obligation for local council when policies are created to do so in tandem with the Planning Act and the Provincial Policy Statement. So basically, it's been there's been a lot of discussion, and I think for the next meeting, I think the attainable housing strategy, in keeping with the endorsement for the attainable housing report that was done by the county. I think those discussions will continue at this point, and that's about all I have to report right now. Unless, Mariana, you've been part of that as well, unless you think I've missed something.
No, I think you did a good job summarizing it. Really, we actually have a local group of students, University of Guelph students, working with the Healthy Growth Committee right now to try to achieve a definition for attainable housing and a target to help us move towards a target. So just to Nico's point about provincial policies, if you watch the last couple of meetings, there was a lot of discussion around provincial policies and heritage conservation. And really what I just want to add to the discussion is that the provincial policy statement is intended to be read in its entirety. And when council makes a decision, it needs to apply the entire policy statement. Heritage conservation is definitely one of the items that need to be considered, and housing is another. So, you know, there's a lot in the policy statement that needs to be considered with decisions. And so any of those policies that are applicable need to be applied, and council needs to make decisions that are consistent with those. So, you know, a Place to Grow Act has specific requirements, and the numbers come down from the province through the county as to the number of like the density targets and the population that we have to accommodate. It's not really a question of whether we're going to do it, but just how we have to do it. So we, just so you know, and for Christine's benefit as well, we have advisory committees established in the township that advise council on specific matters. So this committee, the Heritage Committee, advises council on matters of heritage conservation. The committee itself doesn't apply, obviously, the entire policy statement because this committee works specifically on heritage. So those matters, you know, this committee advises council on those matters to the best of your ability, and council has to consider that in making any of those decisions. But the mandate of this committee is to move forward the conservation efforts, and what we're doing, we are doing specifically that through the Municipal Register, which has the designated and listed properties. So it's property specific, and it's protecting those properties from alteration and on an interim basis from demolition. And we're actively now working through trying to identify and conserve cultural heritage landscapes. So that's going to look at specific areas. So, you know, this committee is definitely moving towards fulfilling its mandate, and it's an ongoing thing. These documents are all, these lists are all sort of living documents, and they continually evolve as we determine, you know, additional properties and areas that require conservation. So that's how this committee's work fits into all of that. And Nico sits on the Healthy Growth Committee, so he's another voice that brings the mandate of this committee and the heritage conservation voice to that committee, so that they can consider, again, other matters, and the conversation can be more comprehensive around that table as well.
And I don't think that anybody wants to see growth happen at the expense of heritage, and certainly my contribution to that Healthy Growth Committee will continue to be to make sure that that doesn't happen.
I think you're a strong voice for that on the committee, and thank you, Nico, for agreeing to be there and to bring us these updates, because it's important that we understand, I think, other perspectives that are being brought forward through that through the various legislation and policy statements, and also that they understand as much as possible through you and what you can also convey to them through that committee, participating in that committee. So thank you for that additional effort you're putting in. Appreciate it, and appreciate you. Great. So we're on to this item is somewhat it's an information item. I don't know if you know any of the background of this item at all, Christine. It's Bridge 4WG, which was one of the bridges that the committee has been looking at in the last year or so, which was in need of, I believe we did an HIA on that. There was 2 bridges, and we recommended this bridge for designation to protect the bridge from demolition, and unfortunately that was not, that recommendation was not accepted by council. So the bridge is going ahead and going to be removed and rebuilt. And so the other part of the heritage impact assessment was a series of recommendations that we could apply in the event that our main first choice for saving the bridge was not accepted. So we have subsequently had some influence and some input into the design of the bridge, this new bridge, and also into the commemorative strategy that's involved. And part of that strategy are plaques that will be mounted on the new bridge to commemorate the old bridge. So have I got that somewhat concisely put there, Mariana? Is there anything you want to add then to this?
No, that's a perfect summary. Other than that, this information item is just to show the dimensions. This is like the drawing, the schematic to show the dimension of the plaque. And we, as discussed at, I don't know if it was the last meeting or the January meeting, but I think it was the last meeting, that we would come up with the wording for that plaque. So we would have to work on that soon, and because it would need to be finalized before June. So we just wanted to put it on the agenda because it's the information piece that has the dimensions on it, and need to start working on the wording for the plaque.
Yeah. So I think we have enough research on the bridge to create to do some wording. Who would you recommend then? Did you have a question, Christine? Yeah, go ahead.
Yes. I live actually up in Salem, and the new Salem Bridge has a plaque that remarks upon the previous bridge and who built it, et cetera, who designed it. And would this new plaque be based upon that kind of model, for lack of a better word?
Yes, so there's typically an image somewhere on the plaque of the form of the former bridge. And then there's just some wording with a brief history, when it was constructed, who constructed it, and any significant design elements that we would take that information generally out of the heritage impact assessment that was done, because it has all the research in it, and just prepare. They're quite short. There's not a lot of verbiage, but just a short, concise commemoration. So we're looking for a couple of people. Normally we would, I guess, turn to the education subcommittee, public relations subcommittee, to do something like that. So, but Nancy's not here, so I'm not sure if we can leave that with her, or if somebody else is interested in maybe assisting her with that as well.
Yeah, I can convey that to Nancy and that request, and perhaps I can help. It's virtually a paragraph, maybe 200 words approximately. So we can get started on that, and perhaps then circulate the wording more widely to the committee, so that we don't have to. So that we can move it forward and don't have to.
I can assist too, and we can use the Irvine Street Bridge as a model as well, because we did that plaque, and it would be similar.
Sure. So based on the HIA that we have, the information there, and the sample plaques, we should be able to move that forward. Don?
Yeah, I just also wanted to sort of update Christine a little bit too, if she's able to see, and I imagine you've been probably looking at the document though. One of the other features that we did spend some time with was getting this impression of it built into the bridge, which you can probably see in that if you see the architectural drawing of it. And that was something that came from earlier meetings. So that's one of the things that our committee certainly got a compromise from. I don't know if that's what I define it as. Maybe it was a compromise, might be the way to say it, from council. And this is hopefully, I think it might be a model for the future for what we might do with a lot of these bridges, because obviously we have a lot that are going to be replaced. So we're trying to look at trying to keep some of its original feel to it. And that's part of that too, along with the plaque, is if you look at the architectural drawing there too, that was several meetings it took to get to that stage of of that design. And I think, I'd like to go back to Phil and Nico. You guys had vision for this, and it was so nice to see getting to engineering levels and then again, eventually getting to this stage. I think it's a great model for the future of what we might be able to do with a lot of the bridges that are being replaced. So I think it's a great start for us to do it in that way. So thanks for your leadership with that. It certainly helped. And I mean, they took your ideas to heart and they made it just, I think really what you were envisioning in many ways. So it came out quite nice.
Yeah, I think, and of course, that is one of the other initiatives that we will include in our work plan, which is the launching of a joint initiative with the engineering, what's that group called, Mariana, who in order to look at the bridges.
Infrastructure. They're called infrastructure services now.
Yeah. So our infrastructure services, in order to start to anticipate what bridges will need service and possible replacement, and so that we can be part of that process, and rather than being a reactive group, we're more proactive. Okay, well, thank you for that, Donna. And we can move to, so we have two items, perhaps we can sort of consider those together, 7.3 and 7.4, which are requests to designate that we received emails about. And you can, presumably you've had a chance to read those emails. So without spending too much time, I think our proposal would be that if there is interest in designating these properties, that we would look at sending these two properties to the designation subcommittee, and also with the support of having some research done in order to provide more information to that committee, and then they could come back to us with a report. And also perhaps consulting with the owners of these properties as well. Anyway, I sort of started the conversation off. Nico, do you want to follow up on that? Because you indicated you wanted to say something on that.
Yes, we've had some preliminary discussion with regard to both properties. I think there was some concern with the recent sale of 70 Victoria as to exactly what the new owner had in mind. But I believe that Mariana has had, I believe she has information about that structure. It's one of two log homes on that from that part of Elora. One we've already designated, and this is another then log home, which was clearly outlined in the attached submission. But anyway, we've had some preliminary discussions about that. Mariana, can you just explain maybe the discussion that you had with the current owner?
So I haven't had any discussions with the current owner. I had several inquiries when the property was for sale. And my understanding is there's no application or anything that I'm aware of that's suggesting that anything is going to change on that property. So I'm not aware of any redevelopment proposed on that property or any applications that have come forward. I just know that it was recently for sale, and that's why that request came forward from the community, because they were concerned, because I guess they realized that it was for sale or sold. So in any case, we are doing research on that property, and the designation subcommittee will contact the owner to discuss pursuing designation.
Yeah. That's, I think that's as much as we can give on that particular site.
And did you have any thoughts then on 7.4 on the Elora Cinema old commercial hotel?
That's another a property that was discussed, and specifically, I guess, concerns about whether the Gorge Cinema was actually a part of that designation. And I think it's since been clarified that yes, it was. Not necessarily the interior of the cinema, but certainly the exterior was included in the designation, and that designation is due for a bylaw update. I think that's about all we discussed on that particular property. I guess the question is, I mean, with the two people that have come forward with these submissions, I think it would behoove us then to at least get back to them in some form or another, either in writing or through some discussion, just to say, thank you, we've received your report, and this is how we're following up.
Yeah, okay, I think that's something that we have a couple of, we have actually a couple of items and we've decided on that these, we will be doing further research, and that these two properties will be referred to the designation subcommittee to begin discussions on designation in the one case. And in the other case, strengthening and expanding the bylaw, improving it in the case of the commercial hotel. Certainly that's an important tool that we'll probably need in order to make sure that we are able to protect the hotel as future development happens. So I think we can, perhaps, could we ask Devlin to send that correspondence then, indicating these actions that we are taking at this time to those. Okay.
That's great.
Okay, thank you, Nico. And then we'll follow up. This will come back onto the agenda then through the designation subcommittee. Thank you. That brings us to our final item then, which is the update on the cultural heritage landscape study. And I'll let Mariana give us that update then.
Sure, thank you. So the commenting period for the study closed at the end of February, and we received comments from the public. So our next step is going to be as the technical subcommittee. So Don and Nico, Phil, and myself will be arranging a meeting shortly. I will send something out soon. And so that we can review the comments received and discuss them and discuss whether any changes or updates need to be made to the final report. And then we need to start discussing how I would have to prepare a staff report going forward with that report when it gets to council for endorsement. So how we're going to provide information to council on moving forward with the study and what that actually means, what the options are. And there's additional information that we definitely would need to provide to council before that is finalized and goes forward. So I will be setting up a meeting. We would be looking to, I mean, the three members of the committee, which is almost half, basically sit on the subcommittee for this this study, and half since the beginning, as intended, so that they bring the voice of the Heritage Committee to the study. But we would be looking for some form of an endorsement from this entire committee on that study before it goes forward. So that is something that I don't know if you've all had a chance yet to go through the study, but we, again, if there are any comments, any concerns or questions, if you could send those through soon so that we can include them as we're going through the comments from the public and agencies that we received before we make any final changes. And then also if you could put your mind to whether you'd be prepared to endorse the study at one of the upcoming, maybe even the next meeting I don't know, Phil, if you wanted to
Yeah.
provide
Right.
a timeline.
Yeah, I think that, we would be looking, assuming that I believe we'll be able to have a meeting, we can look at a timeline, and you can circulate a time for Nico and Don and myself to get together and meet to discuss the feedback that's been received. So that's hopefully happen before the end of March. So if the other members of the committee could consider the report, and if the report as it stands is something you can endorse, then please let us know. Or if you have concerns about aspects of the report, please let us know about that as well, so that we can take those up at the same time. And then we would be in a position where we could bring a question at the following meeting as to whether the committee as a whole is willing to support or endorse the study. Nico, go ahead.
Just one commentary about the study that I believe I've encountered, and that seems to be that there seems to be a misperception that the report itself, identifying the 18 areas, and conservation are synonymous with one another. And I just want to make sure that it's clear to everybody that this is a first phase of the report, and that a conservation study needs to happen as an outcome of the report, rather than being misconstrued as being inherent in the report. So I just want to make sure that I mention that, because I think that clarification is really quite necessary. And I would hope that we can move rather quickly on the conservation part of the next step, which I believe, unless I'm wrong, is something that the technical study people will be looking at.
Yeah, that's very well put. Thank you, Nico. I think if I can speak for Mariana, we're in agreement of that this is just a first step towards moving on to the conservation, actual aspects of conservation. So I don't want to speak for you, Mariana. Go ahead.
No, that's fine. And yes, that's the way we interpret it. It can get quite complicated because you have to look at all the definitions, but under the provincial policy statement and what conserve actually means. Conserve is a process. Conserve is not implied through identification. Identification is the first step. Conservation itself has tools, and those are provided through the Ontario Heritage Act. So those are provided under Part 4 and Part 5, individual properties, listing of properties, and designation as individual and as heritage conservation districts. When we go forward to council, I think we need to make it very clear that identification, just like the former inventory used to be when the Heritage Committee came up with an inventory, until those properties were actually put and transferred over to the Municipal Register, they didn't have any effect. There was no legislative tool to require an owner to do something different. So, we're looking at this study itself we've done the identification process, and we've done some evaluation. There are also, the term conserve comes through also with management and protection. So the management and protection really don't happen through this study. They would happen through future phases. So that definitely needs to be made clear to the public and to council when we go forward. But when we do go forward, we are anticipating taking that information, making that clearer to council, and also providing, I would say, some more detailed information on each one. So on each CHL, and what might be further parameters around each one. What might costs be? What might conservation options be that make the most sense for each CHL? Some might just be require public education and commemoration, which we made clear at the beginning of the study as well. Not every CHL is going to be, let's say, a prime candidate for a conservation district. Some of them are already almost inherently conserved because they have protection, let's say through public agencies, the GRCA or the county, but might need further, we might want further public education around those and commemoration. So how do we do that? So that type of information will come forward in a future report to council so that it is much more clear what the actual implications of this study are. And we will make it more clear that in certain cases, for some of the CHLs that have been identified, we're going to be looking at Heritage Conservation District status. So there's an entire process to that as well. And then there will be an interim piece. So between identification and formal protection through, let's say, a Heritage Conservation District, what are we doing in the interim? And that will be some policies that we might have around whether we might want to ask for a heritage impact assessment for certain types of redevelopments within a CHL that's been identified. So I can direct you, if you're interested at all, to the Kitchener and Waterloo, both studies. They've both done studies for CHLs, and they've both taken the very same approach, that the studies were the identification tool, and they are moving towards protection tools. And in the case of Kitchener, they used their CHL study to inform other planning studies for updating their secondary plan areas, for example. So they have neighborhood specific plans now, and they've used the CHLs to inform one aspect of that. So they've created specific updated secondary plans with official plan policies, zoning, and have added certain properties to the register for more formal protection. So that's how they've used their information from the CHLs from the study. Waterloo has done similar work in that they are proposing updates to their official plan policies around when they would ask for a heritage impact assessment, and use the study results to inform future heritage conservation district studies, for example. So that's my sort of long-winded way of saying that we're going to be going forward to council with a lot more information around what the study actually means, and then what options we would have to move them forward. And one other thing I just want to add is that there is a significant reality to how we implement these things. The more protection tools you put in place, the higher the cost. So the cost of the studies have to be built in and approved by council, which requires some prioritization for funding. And then the cost of implementing such protection tools is significant in terms of staff resources, committee involvement, because who's now reviewing every application that we receive for changes within what could be a potential, let's say, heritage district. So there are a lot of resource implications to moving forward with some of these matters that have to be approved by council as well.
Well, thank you, Mariana, for that. I see Erin has a question.
Yeah, or maybe a question, part question, comment. Part comment. Yeah. Phil, you mentioned that you're updating sort of the overall work plan for the committee as well. And I guess I'm assuming that the CHL study is sort of informing that kind of update. Yes. Or yeah. Yep. So I don't know if like the timelines align or not to put like additional pressure, but is there any merit that, because do you typically sort of give a summary of the work plan to council, or kind of give them an update? It's like annually. Is that something that you typically, or we have done in the past, or not so much?
Yeah, the plan had been last year that I was going to speak to council at the meeting that was actually the first meeting into the pandemic that was canceled. Right. So since then, the work plan has been kind of dismantled and reassembled a couple of times. So hopefully now there'll be an opportunity to kind of reassemble it in a way that looks like it's going to happen maybe for the next 2 years. And so whether or not we take the time to update council at this point I think we have a number of initiatives that we need to talk to them about, so there might be an opportunity to also, circulate the updated work plan to them at that time.
Yeah, I was just wondering if these two things can kind of support each other, like with the CHL, and then how that reflects within our work plan and the prioritization, as Mariana said, of the various studies and everything else.
We had talked about having the subcommittees set themselves some goals.
Mm-hmm.
So what we wanted to do then was circulate the updated work plan to the subcommittees. And then from that work plan, you can set some goals for the next year. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, no, that sounds good.
Yeah.
Great, thank you.
Thank you for the question. Good, well, that brings us to the end of the meeting. If there are no other comments or questions, then I can adjourn the meeting. What do I need to do? Do we do that by consensus here now, or just call for the adjournment?
You can just call it Dawn, and if someone has any objections, they can speak up.
Yes, so if there are no objections, we'll adjourn the meeting, just with a reminder, and I don't see any objections, with a reminder that I believe the next meeting is on Tuesday, is it the 6th or the 9th, the 13th?
It's on the 13th.
Okay, so the next meeting is in April the 13th. As it stands now, we already have a couple items for it, so it will probably go ahead as the way it looks now. And so I thank you for your participation this evening. It was a good meeting. So thank you, everyone, and stay safe. Thank you, Christine.
Sorry, Phil, before you adjourn, I just want to point out that April 13th is now the new kids' March break.
So should
when the schedule was put together, if the committee's okay with going forward at that time, it is not an issue for us. But if we're going to have a quorum issue, I just thought I'd mention.
Okay. Well, maybe what we could do, should we deal with that now, or perhaps just have folks think about it and let us know?
Not like we're going to go anywhere, though. You know what I mean?
You mean you're not heading to, okay.
Yeah.
Well, good. Okay, good point. Let us know if you think it's going to be an issue for you. But otherwise, we'll plan on the 13th of April. Thanks very much, everyone.